Welcome. Hello. My name is Deirdre Harris Kelly, and I'm one of the co-directors of the Romeo Bearden Foundation. On behalf of co-director Joanne Bryant Reed and our trustees, I want to welcome you to this evening's program, an artist talk with Alisha Wormsley. This program is in part due to the, in part, sponsored by the Harlem One Stop. I just want to say, because we have production through them, and we want to also acknowledge that our program takes its name from the historic Cinque Artist Gallery that was founded in the 1960s, a collaboration of artists Romeo Bearden, Norman Lewis, and Ernest Critchlow. So our program takes up where the artist thought and their ideals were to support other artists. I do want to mention before I introduce our guests for this evening that this is a closed caption program, so you will need to enable that on your screens if you can. The chat room will be disabled, but you should feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box provided. And we will leave ample time to take questions. And I also want to say hello to those folks streaming in on Facebook and YouTube pages. So everyone, welcome. Alisha B. Wormsley is an interdisciplinary artist and cultural producer whose work is about collective memory and the synchronicity of time, specifically through the stories of women of color. We will hear and see much about her art tonight, so I quickly just want to run through a few of her accomplishments, things that she wouldn't tell you herself. Alisha's work has been honored and supported with a number of awards and grants to support programs. The People Are the Light program, Afronaut film and performance series, Homewood Artist Residency, and that residency recently received the Mayor's Public Art Award, the Children of Nan film series and archive. There Are Black People in the Future body of work, which many of you probably are familiar with. These projects and works have exhibited widely, namely the Andy Warhol Museum, Octavia Butler's conference at Spelman University, Carnegie Museum of Art, Johannesburg, South Africa, Studio XX in Montreal, Project Row House, the Houston Art League, Rush Art Gallery in New York, the Charles Wright Museum in Detroit, and most recently in the Mattress Factory. Alisha has an MFA in film and video from Bard College and was awarded the postdoctoral research fellowship in art at Carnegie Mellon University, where she has also taught. So without further ado, I want to welcome Alisha B. Wormsley to join us now. Hi, Alisha.
Hey.
Part of your great accomplishments, one thing I didn't mention was that you used to work for the Romeo Bearden Foundation.
I did. It's one of my greatest employment situations.
Oh, many, many moons ago, but also, and you came back and you were an artist, teaching artist for us. And we are forever grateful for that, the accomplishments and the contributions to that program. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to let you take it from here. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about my work, and I'm going to end with a about 13-minute video of my newest project in collaboration with Lee Harris, a Houston artist. So just give a little background. I'm a visual artist and cultural producer working in film, video, sculpture, performance, experiences, text, and sound. I've spent the past 2 decades in a space of negotiating authorship and artistic freedom through an interdisciplinary, mutable practice, committed to the composing and reimagining of Black women's stories while accessing resources. I am centering space for our dreaming and how our narratives might be shared. I studied anthropology in school, and Zora Neale Hurston is definitely one of my greatest mentors, ancestor mentors. And in this book, so when I was, a kid, I mean, my whole life I've been really into science fiction and fantasy. X-Men, I grew up reading X-Men and Octavia Butler and Blade and Dune and all these films that kind of, just gave this open world, this way of world building, this way of thinking about what's happening presently and expanding time and just living without, creating without limitation of time. And so Zora Neale Hurston wrote this book, Sanctified Church, and in it she speaks about shouting. And I grew up in a church. My grandmother was a minister, and she speaks about speaking in tongues. She did this study of sacred spaces of Black people in the rural South in the 20s and 30s. And in this book, she talks about where she recorded when people would speak in tongues. And that's when you're at like a heightened spiritual experience, you start speaking a language that is unknown to you. And she found traces of African dialects in those recordings. And I just thought that was like amazing in science fiction. And just like after hundreds of years of being separated from your language, from your ancestry, that it would be there, that we have this collective consciousness, that our consciousness is in our DNA. It's just incredible to me. And so it made me see things in so many ways. It made me see things, especially with women, Black women. I was raised in a matriarchal family. My grandmothers on both sides of my family ran things. And so I just really paid attention to these magical spaces that Zora is speaking about that expands time, and seeing them through like being a Black woman and observing Black women. And I also am really inspired by Black radical feminist theory, thinking about this Combahee River Collective statement. If Black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free, since our freedom would necessitate the destruction of all systems of oppression. And so, I see that like not only as like a method, a strategy of creating work, but also just it's incredible that like even when Black women are fighting for their own liberation, that they're fighting for everyone else's as well. And so from that, I've been very blessed from a very young age, in my early 20s, to travel a lot. I spent a lot of time in Cuba and going there every 2 years for a decade in my 20s. And I just, would pay attention, and I love being around Black women and just like, and seeing the connections between those spaces or all over the world, and comparing them to the spaces I grew up in. Like the altars that my grandmothers had were similar. The way they clean their house, kept their sheets white, all of those things, like I just think are magical and timeless. And so I start creating these spaces or paying attention to these things in this overlap. And I also, my early work, I made a lot of collage. I used a lot of photography and collage, and was very inspired by Romare Bearden and my time at the Bearden Foundation, and just seeing all of that work and seeing how he created these worlds and through compositing and cutting and layering. And so I, really kind of started to bring that into my own work, into my video work, into my photography, of layering these elements, this time, right? Like you can see the time in this structure and what's happening, and how, and then also thinking about the demise of Black neighborhoods, specifically the neighborhood I grew up in Pittsburgh called Homewood. And so just thinking about like when I left and when I came back, all the changes that happened just in 10 years and 15 years and 20 years. And so I started really thinking about that and like what is the at the root of these spaces is Black women. And so, I'm seeing this, I'm trying to create these spaces and then bring them into gallery spaces or other spaces. Also really focused on meditation and healing and mysticism. So you can see like I'm just like kind of gathering all of these things and I think about I have this project called Children of Nan and it's an archive. It's really me, right? It's really my experiences of like seeing and observing and collecting and so I like have so many things, rituals, celebrations, ceremonies, spaces, stories, jokes, all these things I've collected. I use this archive. All of my projects come from this Children of Nan archive, and especially my video work. I finished a film in 2018 called Mothership. That's about my experience becoming a Black woman, and I used the archive completely. I didn't shoot anything for this film. I just used things that I had used before, and I'll show clips of that. Other projects that I've had, like The People Are the Light, which honored Black women in Homewood. There Are Black People in the Future, which I'll talk about. All of these things I just kind of put into this archive and then, create installations from them. And this is an example in Denver, where I created this wallpaper. I try to cover as much space as possible with Black women and their presence, and go through a certain amount of rituals. After I put the wallpaper up, then I put this metal leaf that you can see on there, and these symbols and shapes protecting these women. I started, so from here, I'll say these are still images from my films, from video, mostly. Some photos I've taken, but mostly video stills. And then I'm kind of reworking that. Like I'm working in this really cyclical way where I'm working on my next film, which is going to be a survival guide, and I'm making these survival guide from the future, and I'm making these quilts as maps. So I'm thinking about these images. I'm reusing these images right from the archive as the basis for creating these objects. These are quilted. I've taken the photographs from the wallpaper and I'm quilting them and trying to tell these stories with them. And then I'm thinking the way that they're stitched could be traced into actual maps. And so I'm kind of playing with this, the idea that quilts were used in the Underground Railroad or as messages, and thinking about that as like a future guide. And so you can see here just a close-up of how I'm working that. I'm also working in stained glass and creating these sort of altar spaces that also have information in them about this kind of survival for this next film I'm working on. And the same thing with these tapestries. So I'm thinking about like the vessel as the womb and these tapestries as circuitry. They actually have these circuit boards, motherboards in them. So again, connecting to that mothering, thinking about Black women's bodies as technology and what information is shared between them. And this is just a poor shot of an installation of the quilts. You can see, I'll tell you later, there's I have some work in New York that you can see those quilts in. And so just again, I started this whole kind of archive, Children of Nan archive, I started really thinking about and putting together when I had a residency with the Warhol Museum, and that Ingrid LaFleur and Eric Scheiner started, and in Homewood, and I actually ended up taking over this residency project and leading it. But this, one of the projects that I was doing is I was working with students, middle school and high school students, and I was working on experimental films, and I was thinking about time and thinking about all the things that I just spoke about. And and we'd walk around and the kids wanted to make zombie films, and we'd walk around and they'd be like, oh, this is the perfect place for a zombie film because it looks like an apocalypse. And so we started thinking about, and when they said that, I was like, this is our neighborhood. Like, why does it look like this? And we started having these conversations, and then things kept, escalating, like my time with these students, where they're, people were getting killed, and people were getting killed, in violence, in these like survival violence acts. And in this neighborhood that's surviving, that was thriving, that I was raised to know all of the amazing things about this neighborhood. The first Black opera, Helen Faison, who like really revolutionized elementary schools, education, and all of these different people and all of these amazing people, and then just to see this after like 2 war on drugs, after all of these things, the survival that's happening in this neighborhood. And so that's how I started There Are Black People in the Future. I was in this space. I started making this film. I'll show a little bit of it. The sound's a little loud, but So when I was a kid, you see the trash in this film. When I was a kid, this neighborhood was clean, so just even thinking about that, like who's here, who's caring for it. And so I wanted people to know, like I wanted the kids to know. And I'm like ranting to my partner, you know what, there are Black people in the future. And I'm thinking about like all of the things that are happening in this neighborhood, and thinking about the past and thinking about the present and the future. And so I started writing that down. And while the kids were making their zombie films, I collected objects and I took them to my studio and I printed There Are Black People in the Future on them and encased them in resin. And I made, over 100 objects that have this text printed on them. And for me, it was like a ritual. And then, I did this work, and then I had an opportunity to put this text on a billboard in another historically black neighborhood in Pittsburgh called East Liberty. And the difference between Homewood and East Liberty is that East Liberty has gone through rapid gentrification. And so put this text on this billboard right above a really important music venue that had been outpriced of the neighborhood. The neighborhood, the developers who actually own this building felt very threatened by this text, and they took it down. And the city of Pittsburgh protested and had my back, and we were able to start a grant project. We had community meetings, and people were like, I feel like the billboard. I feel like I was, my family's lived in this neighborhood for generations, and I feel like I don't belong here. And so I was like, I have to do something more. So I got funding from the Heinz Endowments, and we started an artwork in residency where we gave mini grants to 11 artists and activists and folks to use this text in their work. And it was incredible. And there was so many things that activated from this project: anti-racist yoga school, a Black Mothers program. A teenager got this grant, Ether, to make a Afrofuturist hip hop album about intersectionality. Like, there was just so much beauty came out of this that it helped me have a structure to do this in the future. And so then this is the billboard in Detroit. This is it in Kansas City. And every time I can say, when an institution wants to put the billboard up, I can say, what are you going to do for Black Futures? In Pittsburgh, we did this grant program. So in Detroit, they sold yard signs and gave all of the proceeds to a program that sends high school students to Africa before they go to college. In Kansas City, they commissioned 10 Black and Indigenous artists to make this window piece, which is beautiful. In Houston, Project Row House, we partnered with Project Row House, and they gave out 6 mini grants also, and they did incredible projects all over Houston. This is another project I did in Westmoreland, so the billboard changes. And this is a project I did with Ayanna Moore in Chicago on the freedom movement, which was, focused on Black housing. So we kind of brought it into the future and focused on Black women who are fighting for housing around the country. This is it in Denver. It was, a 5-channel projection, which I'll just show a minute of. And then it ends with there are Black people in the future. And then it just shows up, I love seeing it everywhere. Another project I did was Sybil Shrine. After the There Are Black People in the Future, I had, just this experience to create another program, social practice-based program. And so I started a arts residency for Black mothers. And I'm going to show this video, and then I'm going to show one last video. My name's Alisha Wormsley, and Jessica, Naomi, and I are Sybil Shrine. It's a residency program supporting Black creative mothers, women X, who identify as artists, producers, creatives, and/or activists in the greater Pittsburgh area. Due to the coronavirus epidemic, much of our work has become virtual, which has opened up possibilities for serving an even greater community of Black women. Although our program is specifically focused on uplifting Pittsburgh-based Black mothers, our network has included Black mothers from across the nation.
The network residency is intended to support Black creative mothers over 8-week sessions. In these cohorts, mamas meet weekly every Sunday at 1 o'clock. We discuss current events, how we're feeling, but also moms can talk about whatever their art is, whatever their practice is. They can share it with the group through a workshop. And so they have an opportunity to talk about whatever is important to them in their own practice. And we always compensate moms for this work.
My job as a community liaison is literally to solve my own problems. I am a working mother, but I'm also working and doing my mothering and trying to figure out the best rhythm to be most effective in both of those roles. So as I communicate with the community and speak with them and work with them, my interest is to help figure out how these mothers, these working mothers, can be most effective in all of their roles.
We'll be supporting 3 local Pittsburgh creative Black mothers in their work, in their sustainability, in their surviving to thriving. Each of them have a 12-week specialized programming. The moms will be mentored by our visiting artist that will also be in and out of Pittsburgh, also making work, also mentoring the home moms and the network, all the Sybils, really. We're all gonna benefit from this.
I just wanted to say how appreciative I am to be part of Pittsburgh's first Black Mothers Residency. To me, it's really an example of best practices of self-determination for us. And by design, I really feel that it is an intentional opportunity for Black female artists that are mothers to be supported in ways that are typically not acknowledged. This is a bold action to honor Black mothers with such a generous gift, and I'm very thankful for that.
This opportunity is really once in a lifetime. I never thought that I would have the opportunity to be in a space that allows me to be all of the identities that represent me, including a Black woman, a mother, a cultural worker, an artist and maker, and Sybil Shrine. Not only gives us space to be all of those things together, but is, offering resources and support to be all of those things together.
I love Sybil Shrine. I love the women. I love how we took took care of each other and nourished each other. And so, you know, like if we could build from there, you know, channel funds to create more stability for these Black women, and then they'll create more stability for other Black women, and we keep it going in that way.
Alisha, you're muted.
I am, and I'm talking. Last
Please
thing I wanted
again.
to talk about was this project that I'm doing with Lisa Harris, who is a Houston-based artist. Lisa E. Harris, also known as Lee Harris. She is a sound artist, opera singer, performance artist, filmmaker, brilliant person, sculptor, environmentalist. And we started a project recently. We've been working together since 2004, and we've done a series of projects. One we called Slaves and Indians, that was a land and blood acknowledgement to Black and Indigenous people that we did all around the world. And this is kind of a pickup of that. It's called AFRAM. And I'll read this. AFRAM, African America, is an inner space reality for Black exponential potential of being. In AFRAM, Black people can dream. We can wake up. We can build. Black people can be Black and Indigenous at the same time. We can be alone. We can be angry. We can be trans. We can be lazy. We can trust. We can be uncertain. We can be innocent. We can be mediocre. We can be evil. We can be bored. We can transform. We can be. And so, oh no, sorry. Let me keep going. Okay. Sorry about that. So there we go. So we started this project in Ballroom in Marfa during a residency with Ballroom Marfa, where you know, we used AFRAM because it's Marfa backwards. And it was really interesting to us, you know, because Marfa is an example of present day settler colonialism. We have, you know, this town that was struggling to survive because of changes in industry. You know, there was factories that closed, industry that closed. There was also sharecropping. There was, you know, we heard a lot of stories from Indigenous and immigrants, Latinx immigrants, who talked about sharecropping and picking cotton and all of these things, these ways of survival. And so we're there, and we're in this, you know, kind of very wealthy arts organization space, and we're just, you know, and kind of like two of the only, you know, we didn't see any other Black people. We are, you know, like thinking about all of these residencies we've been on and all of these institutions that have hosted us, and all of these times where we felt unsafe as Black women in these spaces. And we started to think about, like, how could we create a safe space? And we wanted to play. We wanted the landscape is beautiful. We started thinking about what games we could play and how we could, what rituals we can do. That's a big part of Lisa and I's practice is playing and ritual and creating ceremony to create, to acknowledge what has happened and what can happen. And so we started playing tug of war, and we thought about it as a way of opening portals to go to AFRAM. And so we thinking about all kinds of things. We're thinking about industry, we're thinking about land, we're thinking about, you know, decolonizing. We're thinking about, okay, if we open a portal in Marfa, we have to open a portal where there's a high concentration, where there's a low concentration of Black people. We have to open this portal where there's a high concentration of Black people. And how do we keep doing that? And once, if we do it, let's say in our own neighborhoods, or, you know, if we go to Third Ward in Houston that has a high concentration of Black people that we're used to, that this place we're comfortable, then how can we even open that portal even farther, which would be to go to Africa, to, you know, to think about, like, also, like, what if we opened a portal from Suriname and then opened it again in Amsterdam, you know, thinking about colonization, thinking about imperialism. So we're going through all these things, and we started, you know, this is just us workshopping this idea. We went to Utah on the Salt Flats where, you know, we received a Guggenheim Fellowship for this project. And so we are going to be creating, doing this as a research lab all over the place. We're going to Africa this summer. We'll be traveling, you know, for the next 2 years for this project. And I want to show this film that we made from our workshopping. And I'm, you know, pretty past time, but we'll watch as much as we can. We're also using, you know, resources like the Green Book and historical interviews. And, you know, in Utah, we opened this portal in the Salt Flats, but we also opened it at this, you know, this hotel, which was in the Green Book. And we opened it in at this Calvary Church, which here's an historic image of it. So we're just like kind of working through all of this. And I want to share this film with you.
To keep pace. Others accept it because it is new, but not very many is expected to go through. That's right. Many there are that started the race, but with the light they refuse to go through. No. Many there are who started the race, but with the light they refuse to keep pace. Others accept it because it is new, but not very many is expected to go through. That's right. Many there are that started the race, but with the light they refuse to go through. No. Many there are who started the race, but with the light they refuse to keep pace. Others accept it because it is new, but not very many is expected to go through. That's right. Many there are that started the race, but with the light they refuse to go through. No. Many there are who started the race, but with the light they refuse to keep pace. Others accept it because it is new, but not very many is expected to go through. That's right. Many there are that started the race, but with the light they refuse to go through. No. Many there are who started the race, but with the light they refuse to keep pace. Others accept it because it is new, but not very many is expected to go through. That's right.
Many there are who started the race, but with the light they refuse to keep pace. Others accept it because it is new, but not very many are expected to go through. Please hurry and take your seats. You can step out of the aisle so the other passengers can come through as quickly as possible. We will be blasting off soon. Passenger Rakia Boyd.
I used to meet her all the time, and she was the queen.
Alexis Montgomery.
She was the queen. I used to meet her all the time, and she was the queen.
Raynette Turner.
All the time, and she was the queen.
Rakina Jones.
I used to meet her all the time, and she was the queen.
Passenger Sandra Bland.
Meet her all the time, and she was the queen.
This is your last call.
She was the queen. I used to meet her all the time, and she was
Please
the
report
queen.
to the gate.
I used to meet
This song is going out to you right there, my bro. It's going out to you right there, even though you don't know. It's all right. Somebody sing it for you. This song is going out to anybody and everybody that's ever lost somebody. Yeah, I share. You know, where I'm from, when we lost somebody, we pour out a little bit of our drink for them. So if you got a little bit of drink, like you got a little bit, you can pour out just a little bit right there for them. You know, you ain't about to do it, but I'll find something to pour. There you go. Thank you. If you have a little bit of your drink in your can, if you pour out a little bit for me, just a little bit, for somebody, you good? You good? Because they walking with you, and they thirsty too. But you good. You good. I want y'all to sing along with me. All Or y'all can just listen for a little bit. All right. Every time I'm drinking on something, I pour out a little for you. Because you was my dude. And that's how we do. Y'all, the thing about cracks, okay, not crack, but maybe crack, I don't know, but the thing about cracks, sidewalk, in the sky, crack on your iPhone. I know y'all feel some kind of way about those cracks. The thing about cracks is that every crack is an opportunity to slip through. So when you see a crack, any crack that you see, I want you to remember these things that I'm saying to you right now. I want you to remember that on one breath you can slip through. On one breath you can remember. Little, they used to say, step on a crack, you break your mother's back. You step on a crack, you break your mother's back. You step on a crack, you break your mother's back. It's not true. Go forth. Be blessed.
Okay, that's it.
Wow. Thank you. That's amazing. I was having so many different visions of like what this line could represent. I mean, a lot of it was play, a lot of it was war, but it was also maybe the color line, a clothesline. I mean, it was all these things that really just made me think about, how you can take a form like that and put it in so many different places and have it so many disparate places, because you say this is Marfa, but it looked like a lot of different, very different landscapes.
Yeah, I mean, also even just thinking about this, a lot of it, we think about this country, like how much of this country, like we, just even in Utah too, like there were places in Utah that look like another planet, and how often do we see those spaces, or how often are those spaces, available, accessible to Black people, and like, and even, you're definitely like people, the more we do the project, the more, someone mentioned, I was giving a talk in Utah, and they were like, you could think about like rice trade and how rice moved from place to place. Lisa and I were thinking about the coils of our hair and like the difference between, different textures of Black hair and like the rope and like all of these, there's just so many places that we could go with this project that we're kind of giving ourselves the space. That's why we're calling it a research lab, because we want to keep doing this in different communities and in different spaces and see what comes together.
Right. And Lisa, she's a collaborator that you've worked with for many years, right? I mean,
our whole adult life, I think.
Right. And she's primarily a singer, an opera singer and composer.
Yeah, she's I would say, she has a master's in opera, but she is like beyond, she's a magical, mystical person in sound and experimentation, and she just like, I wouldn't even limit her to say she's a singer, opera singer, or not that that's necessarily a limitation, but she's has been through like Paulina Oliveira's School of Deep Listening. She has plays the theremin. She does experimental work. She's doing a project with connecting to climate change and I can't think of the name of the project right now.
But she's doing all of the voiceover here and the text. It's her text. And that kind of gives me just a little segue. That was unbelievable. I mean, there's so many questions, but I have some other questions to go through. So, I was thinking about other collaborators that you've worked with, besides Lisa, I know. And your work is so interdisciplinary. There's so many different angles and techniques and platforms that you're using. Can you talk about this idea of working collaboratively?
Yeah, I just really, I think a lot of it is, I kind of like came into being an artist or a maker through collaboration. Really, it was like, I kind of thought about like in the ways that I was using art as a tool was more in this sort of documentary space, storytelling space, or educator as an educator. And I didn't, it wasn't until I started collaborating with Lisa and Jamila Reagan and Jasmine Hearn and all of these other people that I really started to think about, like myself as an artist even. And so I think a lot of it is also like because of that collaborative space, and also just because I feel like more than anything, I'm a problem solver, and like I figure things out quickly. Like I know how to do a lot of things. And so I think that just from survival, just from like being an arts educator, I just learned so many things. And so I think that I've been able to use those things that I've learned. And also, I will tell you, like, just seeing all of the ways that Bearden worked In my, as a 22-year-old working for the Bearden Foundation, it was really inspiring for me. It really, and then I kind of gravitated towards other mentors that, make in so many different ways. And it also just kind of remind me of being like, of my grandmothers or my mom who just figures out anything or,
Right. Right. I wanted to ask you about this project where with the Sybil Shrine, because this has got to be such a unique, program where you're actually inviting other creatives to help women artists do their work, do their housework. And I mean, tell us a little bit about, like, how did you come up with that idea?
Well, when I became a mother, people started making decisions for me, like I had residencies and I told them that I was going to be a mother and they were like, oh, I guess you're not coming. I guess this, or I guess you can't do this project because of this. And it just really started, and then I just started seeing things, like once you know, like I just started paying attention, like thinking about all of my teen mom students who couldn't be artists because they had to go to dental technician school or they had to, do all these things. Or I started thinking about my own mother and I started thinking about in her artistry and how she had to take care of us. And I started thinking about all these things. And then, I'm open, women were telling me, I remember this one woman told me that she had, she was a stay-at-home mom and she got in a car accident and the insurance company wouldn't help their family because she didn't have income. She didn't have any qualifiable income.
Oh, wow.
The work that she did taking care of her kids and family and home was not a qualifiable, so it was just okay, things like that. So I just, and then even thinking about raising Black children, all those things. So I just, because of their Black people in the future, because I had such a success with that grant program, I just was like, okay, this, and also all of the Black women who got grants for their Black people in the future in that first iteration in Pittsburgh, they all did something for Black moms. And so even I started thinking, of course, it just all kind of started to come together.
Right.
And so we started this, and I knew that I couldn't run this project on my own. So I found Jessica Gaynell Moss, who worked for Theaster Gates, who started her own residency project in North Carolina called The Roll Up. And she was just becoming a mother. And I said, and I was like, do you want to work on this project with me? And she said yes. And then the Office of Public Art that supported their Black People in the Future grant program, who is an office of mothers who also not all Black, but an office of mothers anyway. And so they also were like, we'd love to help you with this. We'll support you however we can. And then we started and we, and everyone we told, all the places, I've been so supported in this city in Pittsburgh. I've had residencies with the Glass Center, Air, Silver Eye, all photo, all these places that I have relationships with were like, how can we help you? How can we support you? So they all just give, all of our moms can go take classes at the Glass Center for free. They can all use the print shop. They can all do this, it's just been really kind of amazing thing. We started, and we started during the pandemic. We got this huge grant from the Heinz Endowments during the pandemic. And we were like, well, what are we going to do? We had this research and travel budget. We weren't even supposed to start yet. We had a period of research and travel, but because of the pandemic, we couldn't travel. And there really wasn't that much research to do anyway, because there aren't any other programs, any other residencies that support Black moms, so it's
that's easy.
I know. So we took all that money that was for travel and research, and we just were like, how do we just give the money to the moms? And so we started the network, and the moms they got stipends just for joining. And if they wanted to share their skills in a workshop, they got paid for that. And we have this little kind of, we used, just created its own kind of granting program within the network. So we have 80 moms from across the country. And,
Wow.
our original grant was for Pittsburgh moms, because Pittsburgh is like one of the worst cities for Black women. There was a huge report from the University of Pittsburgh that states this, that shows the research and the findings of this. And so we were focused on Pittsburgh, Black moms in Pittsburgh, but because of the network, we've been able to open up to all across the country. We have moms from everywhere, and we have people signing up all the time. Like, we have this, it's really amazing. And then we have 3 home residencies, and we have our visiting artists for this round, and we'll do, and then we're about to have our culminating show at the Mattress Factory this summer.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about some of your recent shows, your work. You mentioned in New York that folks can go see, but I had one quick question myself.
Yeah.
What does Nan stand for?
Oh, it's the most used syllable in African dialects for mother.
Ah, Children of the Nan.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very
like
clever.
Nana.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's clever. All right. Someone said something about the rope pulling seemed to be a tug of war between women, but we know that that's not a tug of war necessarily. But
it's tension.
But it's tension. It's good. It's good tension. It keeps things moving.
Yeah. It's our strength. It's like what creates the ripple.
Yes.
The portal. It opens the portal, that tension between us. We're working together to open this portal.
That's a good answer. That's very good. So you have some folks on here from Pittsburgh, I guess. There's one woman who said that all of this reminded her. She's originally from Pittsburgh. She's in Japan now. She's watching. She was in the Hill District, and your mention of Homewood, Romeo Bearden, and seeing your work is exhilarating. This is Stephanie E or L. I don't know her last name. But I was going to ask a question about like you being from and operating out of Pittsburgh, because, that was a place where Bearden lived. He graduated from Peabody High there.
That's right.
And it's just been so wonderful. We know you from New York, but then you went back to Pittsburgh, and it seemed like you made Pittsburgh a much shinier, artsy place.
Well, they let me, Pittsburgh. There's something about like that, this is like my place of origin, and my family's here, and I got a lot of cousins that got my back.
Yeah, that's right. That's how you have a built-in audience.
Yeah, and so that show up to all my shows, even if they don't understand what I'm doing, they still come, and represent. And Pittsburgh has really supported me in a lot of ways, and I'm grateful to it. And it's also been, I could take a lot of the hustle that I learned in New York and bring it here, and create, kind of make all the things that I want to make.
Right. Oh, we are out of time, but can you do tell us about the New York City shows and other shows that you have up right now?
Yeah, I'm in New York. I have some work. Some of those quilt pieces are in, and a video piece that Lee and I worked on together is in a gallery right now called Showroom. It's 678 Broadway on the 5th floor, and it's curated by a collective called the Soft Network. And we're actually doing a performance piece with Kamal Patton and Jasmine Hearn, and using a piece called Variations that is Stan Vanderbeek, Namjoon Pike, Merce Cunningham work. And then I also have some pieces opening in a group show at Acon Gallery. It opens Thursday, actually, and that is at 35 Great Jones in Manhattan. And then in September, I know most of the people probably listening are from New York. So in September, I also have a solo show that's opening at Q Foundation on September 15th. And yeah, and you can check out my website that actually is going to be is being updated as we speak, and will launch a new site. Will launch.
It's a beautiful site. I can't imagine you need to update.
Well, it's not going to change that much, but it just hasn't been like new work has not been put on there, and since the pandemic started.
All right. Well, they've been posting that in the chat, so you may have some traffic. So you better hurry.
Okay. Yeah, check it out on Thursday. It'll be a whole new thing.
Right. Well, Alisha, my heart, I just want to thank you for coming and talking with us and our audiences and learning more about your work. There's just so much to know there. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing for women and artists of color, and mothers in particular, because I'm a mother,
I know it. I know.
So I enjoyed. I really enjoyed seeing the video because this is new work that I hadn't seen before. So I was really happy to see that. So
awesome.
Thank you. I think that's all we have, but I thank everyone for coming. I want to thank Joanne, who's behind the scenes, our staff, Ron Jackson, and of course the great Nadal Canary, who's did the production for us, and all of you for coming. And now we have Shep, and he's
I know he knows what time it is too.
All right, thank you so much, Alisha.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Love to you and the Bearden Foundation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.